John had always dreamed of visiting New York, the city of bright lights, endless adventures, and towering skyscrapers. One day his phone buzzed. It was a message from his old friend Wiston. "Hey John, why don't you visit me in New York? I'll show you around." John's heart raced with excitement. Could this really be happening? A trip to the famous New York City? The land of opportunity, Times Square, and the Statue of Liberty? He had to say yes. Before we jump into John's exciting journey, welcome to English Tone, where I teach English through stories and other creative ways. If you love learning English in a fun and engaging way, stay with us till the end. Now, let's continue John's adventure. The airplane wheels screeched against the runway as the plane finally touched down at John F. Kennedy International Airport, JFK. A slight jolt ran through the cabin, but John barely noticed it. His heart pounded with excitement as he leaned closer to the window, his breath fogging up the glass. Outside, the New York skyline stood tall in the distance, illuminated under the golden hues of the late afternoon sun. John could barely believe it. He had seen New York in movies, heard about it in songs, and imagined it countless times, but now he was here, right in the middle of it all. "This is real," he whispered to himself. A flight attendant's voice crackled through the speakers. "Welcome to New York City. The local time is 4:15 p.m., and the temperature outside is 62 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 degrees Celsius. Please remain seated until the captain turns off the seatbelt sign." John barely listened. His entire body buzzed with anticipation. This was his first time in the United States, and everything about it felt surreal. As passengers stood up to retrieve their luggage, John took a deep breath, soaking in the moment. He had spent months planning this trip with his best friend, Wiston, who had moved to New York a few years ago. Now it was finally happening. He grabbed his backpack, made his way down the aisle, and stepped off the plane into the terminal. The moment John entered the airport terminal, he was hit by a wave of new sensations. The air smelled of coffee, fresh pretzels, and the faint scent of cleaning detergent. The terminal was a world of motion. Passengers rushed in all directions, some dragging wheeled suitcases, others checking their phones, and a few arguing with taxi drivers over fares. The buzz of different languages filled the air. John caught snippets of Spanish, French, Mandarin, Arabic, and even Italian as people hurried past. It was unlike anything he had experienced before. "Wow," John murmured under his breath. He spotted huge glass windows offering a view of the planes parked outside, their engines humming softly. Digital screens flickered with arrival and departure times, while a robotic voice announced flight information over the speakers. As John walked further, he noticed a family taking pictures near a "Welcome to New York" sign. A little girl in a pink hoodie tugged on her mother's sleeve, pointing excitedly at a poster of the Statue of Liberty. "That'll be me soon," John thought with a grin. Then suddenly, "John, over here." John turned and saw Wiston waving excitedly near the baggage claim area. John's face broke into a wide grin as he rushed toward his friend. Wiston looked the same as ever, tall, slightly unshaven, and wearing his usual New York Yankees cap. They embraced briefly, laughing. "Man, I can't believe you're finally here," Wiston said, clapping John on the back. "Neither can I," John said, looking around again. "This place is unreal." Wiston smirked. "Oh, just wait. You haven't seen anything yet." They made their way to the baggage claim. As John pulled his suitcase from the conveyor belt, Wiston grabbed it and motioned toward the exit. "Let's get out of here," Wiston said. "Your New York adventure starts now." The airport's sliding doors whooshed open, and John stepped outside, instantly feeling the cool autumn air brush against his face. The scene before him was pure chaos, but the good kind. A line of bright yellow taxis stretched along the curb, their drivers waving at potential passengers. Car horns blared, distant sirens wailed, and an omnibus rumbled past, its advertisement for a Broadway show plastered along its side. A man in a suit hurried past them, talking loudly on his phone. Two tourists snapped selfies with their oversized suitcases, and a street musician strummed a guitar nearby. John took a deep breath. The city smelled different, a mix of street food, gasoline, and the crisp scent of autumn leaves. "This is insane," John whispered. Wiston grinned. "Welcome to New York, my friend." They approached a yellow taxi, and Wiston leaned through the window. "Manhattan, please," he said to the driver. The driver nodded. "Hop in." As soon as they got in, the taxi sped off, merging into the flow of endless cars and blinking traffic lights. John pressed his face against the window, his eyes darting from towering skyscrapers to massive billboards advertising everything from Nike to Broadway musicals. "Dude, I feel like I'm in a movie," John said. Wiston chuckled. "That's New York for you." The taxi moved down Queens Boulevard, and John caught sight of a group of people sitting outside a cafe, chatting over coffee. A street vendor pushed a cart labeled hot pretzels and roasted nuts, and the delicious smell drifted into the taxi. "Is food always everywhere here?" John asked. Wiston nodded. "Oh, you'll see food carts on almost every street. Hot dogs, pretzels, kebabs, you name it. And at night? The city is even crazier." As they entered Manhattan, the taxi driver swerved skillfully through the congested streets, honking occasionally. John's eyes widened as he saw the Empire State Building rising above the skyline. "That's the Empire State Building," he pointed. "Yup," Wiston said. "We'll go up there later this week. The view from the top is incredible." John shook his head in amazement. "I still can't believe I'm actually here." The taxi stopped at a red light, and John noticed a group of street performers dancing to hip-hop music on the sidewalk. "People just start dancing on the streets?" he asked. Wiston laughed. "Dude, this is New York. Anything can happen." The light turned green, and the taxi moved forward, entering a bustling neighborhood lined with restaurants, fashion stores, and theaters. Finally, after a 40-minute ride, the taxi pulled up in front of a red brick apartment building. "Here we are," Wiston said as they stepped out of the taxi. John stared up at the towering building, its windows reflecting the city lights. The entrance had a glass door with a security system, and a doorman greeted them with a nod. "Nice place," John said. "Yeah, it's home," Wiston replied, leading him inside. The lobby was sleek and modern, with a few residents chatting near the elevator. As they stepped inside, Wiston pressed the 9th floor button. "Dude, get ready," Wiston said, smirking. "Tomorrow, we start our New York adventure bright and early." John grinned. "I can't wait." As the elevator doors closed, John felt a thrill of excitement rush through him. Tomorrow, he would wake up in New York City, and his adventure was just beginning. The next morning, Wiston had an excited glint in his eyes as he pulled John out of the apartment. "Today, we're going to a place that defines New York City," he announced. John, still adjusting to the city's fast-paced life, chuckled. "You mean those tall buildings? Because I think I've already seen thousands of them." Wiston laughed. "No, my friend. We're heading to Times Square." As they emerged from the subway station and stepped onto the bustling streets of Times Square, John felt his breath hitch. It was everything he had imagined and more. His eyes darted around, absorbing the scene, massive billboards flashing advertisements in vibrant colors, gigantic digital screens displaying fashion brands, Broadway show posters, and the glowing red steps where tourists gathered to take photos. The entire place was alive with energy, movement, and an electrifying atmosphere. "This place never sleeps," Wiston said, grinning. "Even at midnight, you'll find people here, taking pictures, watching the performers, or just soaking in the vibe." John turned in circles, overwhelmed yet thrilled. Everywhere he looked, there was something happening. People talking loudly, street artists creating stunning paintings on the sidewalk, musicians playing jazz on their saxophones, and vendors selling soft pretzels and roasted nuts. Suddenly, a man dressed as Spider-Man leaped in front of John and struck a superhero pose. "Hey buddy, wanna take a picture?" he asked enthusiastically. John laughed, pulling out his phone. "Absolutely." As he posed next to the costumed performer, a woman dressed as the Statue of Liberty waved at him, and behind her, another performer dressed as Elmo danced with a group of children. The entire place felt like an open-air carnival, bursting with color and life. Wiston nudged him. "Come on, let's grab something to eat. You haven't truly experienced New York until you've had a street hot dog." They approached a classic New York hot dog stand. The vendor, a cheerful old man, greeted them. "Welcome to the best hot dog stand in the city. What can I get you, boys?" "One classic hot dog with mustard for me," Wiston said. John hesitated. "I think I'll try one too." As soon as he took a bite, the flavors exploded in his mouth. The juicy sausage, the tangy mustard, and the soft bun. "This is delicious," he exclaimed, his mouth full. Wiston laughed. "Told you. It's simple but iconic." They sat on a bench, watching the flow of people around them. John marveled at the diversity: tourists with cameras, business people rushing in suits, artists painting, children giggling. New York truly was a melting pot of cultures. "So, what's next?" John asked, still taking in the sights. Wiston smirked. "Something you'll never forget. I got us tickets to a Broadway show." John nearly choked on his hot dog. "Wait, seriously? Broadway? As in, the most famous theater district in the world?" Wiston nodded. "Exactly. You can't visit New York without seeing a Broadway play." Excitement bubbled inside John as they walked toward the Grand Theater. The entrance was stunning: bright lights, glamorous posters, and a red carpet welcoming theater lovers. The smell of popcorn and the faint hum of excited conversations filled the air. John could feel the magic even before stepping inside. As they entered, ushers guided them to their seats. The auditorium was enormous, with balconies stretching toward the ceiling, chandeliers casting a warm glow, and a grand stage hidden behind a velvet curtain. John turned to Wiston. "Which play are we watching?" "One of the classics, a musical that has been running for years." Wiston replied with a grin. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the audience. John's heart pounded as the orchestra began playing. The curtain lifted, and the actors took the stage. For the next 2 hours, John was lost in a world of music, storytelling, and breathtaking performances. The actors' voices filled the room, their expressions so vivid that John felt every emotion. The costumes, the lighting, the choreography, everything was mesmerizing. At one point, he leaned toward Wiston and whispered, "This is unbelievable. It's like the story is alive." Wiston nodded. "That's the magic of Broadway. It's not just a play, it's an experience." By the time the final act ended and the audience erupted in applause, John felt an overwhelming sense of awe. He clapped until his hands hurt, completely absorbed in the magic of live theater. As they stepped out of the theater into the cool night air, John sighed happily. This was one of the best days of my life. Wiston chuckled. Wait until you see what's next. John raised an eyebrow. There's more. Wiston nodded, his eyes twinkling. Tomorrow, we visit the Statue of Liberty. You've seen Times Square, you've seen Broadway, but now it's time to see the true symbol of freedom. John's heart skipped a beat. The Statue of Liberty? He had only ever seen it in books and movies. The idea of standing before it in real life sent a thrill down his spine. As they walked back to their apartment under the shimmering city lights, John couldn't stop smiling. New York was turning out to be everything he had dreamed of and more. John woke up to the sound of car horns and distant chatter outside the window. New York never slept, and neither did his excitement. Today was special. Wiston had promised to take him somewhere iconic, historical, and deeply meaningful. As John got ready, he turned to Wiston. So, where are we going today? Wiston grinned. One of the most famous landmarks in the world, the Statue of Liberty. John's eyes widened. Are you serious? I've always wanted to see it in real life. Then let's not waste any time, Wiston said, grabbing his jacket. They stepped outside into the busy streets of New York. The air was fresh, and the city was already awake, with people rushing to work, coffee in hand, and yellow taxis zooming past. As they walked toward the subway station, John couldn't stop thinking about what lay ahead. The subway ride was fast and packed with people. John observed how New Yorkers moved with purpose, barely stopping to look around. It amazed him how the city's energy never faded. Finally, they reached their stop, climbed up the stairs, and stepped into Battery Park, a beautiful place at the southern tip of Manhattan. The gentle sea breeze filled the air, and the distant sound of seagulls made John feel as if he was already on the water. John looked around. This place is peaceful compared to the rest of New York. Wiston nodded. That's why I love coming here. It's the perfect place to escape the noise of the city. In the distance, John saw a large ferry docked, people lining up, excited chatter filling the air. His heartbeat quickened. This was it. He was about to see Lady Liberty up close. They boarded the ferry, and John quickly rushed to the open deck, eager to get a view of the famous statue. As the boat started moving, the cool wind brushed against his face, and he took a deep breath, feeling the salty ocean air. As the ferry moved farther away from Manhattan, John turned to see the skyline behind him. The Empire State Building, One World Trade Center, and the Brooklyn Bridge all stood tall, creating a breathtaking view. This city is unbelievable, John murmured. But then, something even more incredible came into view. At first, it was just a small green figure in the distance, but as the ferry moved closer, it grew larger and grander, standing proudly on Liberty Island. John's breath caught in his throat. Wow, he whispered. I've seen it in movies, but standing here feels magical. Wiston smiled, watching his friend's reaction. It's different when you see it with your own eyes, isn't it? John nodded. The statue wasn't just a monument. It was a symbol, a message, a story in itself. As they approached the island, John couldn't take his eyes off the statue. The crown with 7 spikes, the flowing robes, the torch held high in her right hand, and the tablet in her left hand. Every part of her seemed to tell a story. Wiston placed a hand on John's shoulder. You know, this statue represents freedom and hope. Millions of people came to America, dreaming of a better life. This was the first thing they saw. John turned to Wiston. Millions? That many people? Yes. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, immigrants from all over the world, Italy, Germany, Ireland, Russia, traveled to America, escaping war, poverty, and hardships. When they saw Lady Liberty, they knew they had reached a land full of possibilities. John's mind raced. He imagined a family on a ship, exhausted from the long journey, eyes filled with hope as they spotted the statue for the first time. What must they have felt? Relief? Joy? A new beginning? It's more than just a statue, John said, deep in thought. It's a reminder of dreams and possibilities. Wiston smiled. Exactly. The ferry docked, and John eagerly stepped onto Liberty Island. Up close, the statue towered above him, its green color shining under the sun. It was enormous, powerful, yet welcoming. John pulled out his phone and took a picture. I have to remember this forever. Wait until we climb to the pedestal, Wiston said with a grin. The view from there is amazing. They walked around the island, learning more about the statue's history. John discovered that France had gifted it to America in 1886 as a sign of friendship. The copper used to build it had originally been brown, but over the years, it had turned green due to oxidation. Science and history in one monument, John said, impressed. Wiston laughed. New York is full of surprises. After exploring the base, they finally climbed to the pedestal. John's heart pounded with excitement. As they reached the top, he gasped. The view was breathtaking. From the pedestal, John could see the entire New York harbor, the sparkling blue water, the Manhattan skyline, and the Brooklyn Bridge in the distance. This is incredible, John whispered. I feel like I'm on top of the world. Wiston chuckled. Just wait till you see the view from the Empire State Building later. John turned to him, eyes wide. We're going there next? Wiston grinned. Of course. New York isn't just about history, it's about touching the sky. John smiled, feeling grateful and excited. His adventure wasn't over yet. With one last glance at the Statue of Liberty, he whispered to himself, I'll never forget this moment. As they boarded the ferry back to Manhattan, John couldn't help but think about what awaited him next. The Empire State Building, the city lights, and another unforgettable experience. The sky above New York glowed with streaks of orange and pink as the evening approached. The air was crisp, and the city lights began to flicker like stars below. John and Wiston walked along the crowded streets, their footsteps blending with the sound of honking taxis and distant chatter. Are you ready for the grand finale of your trip? Wiston asked, his eyes shining with excitement. John chuckled. You've already shown me so many amazing places. What could possibly top this? Wiston smirked. Oh, you'll see. They turned a corner, and there it was, the Empire State Building, standing tall against the colorful evening sky. Its Art Deco design, glowing with golden lights, made it look even more majestic. John had seen pictures of it before, but standing in front of it now, he felt tiny. This is incredible, John whispered, tilting his head back to take in its height. Wait until you see the view from the top, Wiston said. Come on. They made their way inside, where the grand lobby welcomed them with its golden ceiling and elegant chandeliers. John ran his fingers over the smooth marble walls, feeling the history within them. The building had stood here since 1931, witnessing decades of change from the Great Depression to the modern era. Did you know, Wiston said as they waited for the elevator, that this building was once the tallest in the world? John raised an eyebrow. Really? When it was completed, it stood taller than any other skyscraper at the time. Even today, it's one of the most famous buildings in the world. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and they stepped inside. The panel lit up, showing the floors they would pass, each number glowing as they zoomed upward at lightning speed. "Going up fast," John exclaimed, gripping the side rails. Wiston laughed. "Hold on tight. We'll be at the 86th floor in no time." As the elevator whooshed up, John's excitement grew. He could feel a slight pressure in his ears as they ascended higher and higher. Within seconds, the doors slid open, revealing a sight that took John's breath away. They stepped out onto the observation deck, and before John could even process what he was seeing, the wind greeted him, cool and refreshing. The entire city stretched out below them, a glowing masterpiece of twinkling lights, moving traffic, and towering skyscrapers. "Wow," John whispered, stepping closer to the edge. He rested his hands on the railing, eyes wide with amazement. From up here, the city looked completely different. The bustling streets that once felt overwhelming now seemed calm and mesmerizing. The tiny yellow taxis moved like toy cars, the roads winding like glowing veins of a living city. Skyscrapers stood proudly, their windows reflecting the last hues of the sunset. "This view is breathtaking," John murmured. "I can see the whole city from up here." Wiston grinned. "Told you. This is what makes New York so special. You're standing right in the heart of it all." John took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp air, trying to capture every detail in his memory. The Brooklyn Bridge, Central Park, the Hudson River, all lay before him like a perfect postcard. "The city looks so peaceful from up here," John said. "But down there, it's so busy and loud." "That's the beauty of it," Wiston replied. "New York is alive. It never stops. But up here, you can just take it all in." As John gazed at the horizon, he noticed something magical. The city lights flickered like stars. The sky above was deep blue now, with the last traces of daylight fading. It was as if the sky and the city were competing in a glow of brilliance. "Look at Times Square from here," Wiston pointed out. "Even from this high up, you can see it glowing like a beacon." John smiled. "It really is the city that never sleeps." They stood there for a long moment, simply absorbing the beauty. The wind tousled John's hair, but he didn't mind. It felt like he was on top of the world, looking down at a dream come true. "You know," Wiston said, leaning on the railing beside him, "I come here sometimes when I need to clear my mind. Something about being up here makes everything feel possible." John nodded. "I get it. From up here, the world looks so big, yet somehow I feel like I can conquer anything." Wiston smiled. "That's the New York spirit." Just then, John's phone buzzed. He glanced down. It was a message from his mother. "Hope you're enjoying your trip. Can't wait to hear all about it when you get back." John's heart tightened a little. He realized his trip was coming to an end. "I can't believe I have to leave tomorrow," he said, a hint of sadness in his voice. Wiston patted his back. "Hey, don't be sad. This isn't the end. You'll come back." John looked at his friend and then back at the city. He knew this wasn't a goodbye, just a "see you later." With one last deep breath, he smiled. "You're right. This isn't my last time in New York." The elevator doors opened again, signaling it was time to go. As they stepped inside, John took one last look at the glowing skyline before the doors slid shut. As they descended, his heart was full, not just with memories, but with a longing to return. And so, the adventure wasn't over just yet. The sun had barely risen when John woke up on his last day in New York. As he packed his bags, he felt a deep mix of happiness and sadness. He had spent the past few days exploring the city, experiencing its energy, and making unforgettable memories with Wiston. Now it was time to say goodbye. Wiston walked him to the taxi, smiling. "John, I hope you enjoyed your time here." John nodded. This trip was beyond amazing. Every street, every place, Times Square, the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, I'll never forget any of it. As the taxi sped toward JFK Airport, John looked out at the glittering skyline, now so familiar yet still so magical. He had always imagined New York to be special, but living it had been a dream come true. At the airport, Wiston pulled him into a warm hug. "Remember, New York will always welcome you back." John grinned. "And next time, I'll stay even longer." Boarding the plane, he took a final glance at the city. The towering skyscrapers, the endless streets, the twinkling lights. It was a view he would carry in his heart forever. As the plane soared into the sky, he whispered to himself, "New York, I'll be back." His adventure in the city had ended, but he knew this was just the beginning of many more journeys to come. Did you enjoy John's adventure in New York? If you could visit any city in the world, where would you go? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to English Tone for more exciting stories. See you in the next one.